What historical fact makes you cry? A story from my great-grandfather, who fought in WW1. Soldiers would cease fire to pick up their men's bodies and would have a smoke together, go back to their trenches, and start firing again. Neither side of frontline soldiers actually wanted to be there, just drafted for war. It doesn't exactly make me cry, but Albert Göring, the staunchly anti-Nazi brother of Hermann Göring, spent the Second World War helping Jews and dissidents to escape. He was caught several times, but was let off the hook due to his brother's influence within the Reich. After the war, he was shunned for his last name and his accomplishments forgotten. I take solace in the fact that he never did it for the recognition. Some of the world's greatest deeds have come from nameless men and women. God, this just gave me chills. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. The doors to the exit and the stairwells were locked, so you either had to jump out the window or be burned alive. I'm sure I'm paraphrasing, but regulations are written in blood. That's what my dad says about his job at the railroad. The rulebook is written in blood. Dangerous shit. The rape of Nanking in 1937. Looking up photos of what the Japanese did there left me silent for a while. They raped and murdered women. Bayoneted babies. You can look up a photo of it. Use the wounded as rifle and bayonet practice. Forced mothers on their sons and fathers on their daughters. And made a contest out of beheading civilians. There is a Japanese newspaper article you can look up about it. It's disgusting. And the worst part about it is that the Japanese government denies most of these acts, along with a lot of other war crimes that they committed afterwards. It always shakes me to my core to know that human beings are capable of doing such horrible things to one another, and smile while doing it. I can't remember his name, but this actually caused a high-ranking Nazi official stationed over there to safeguard well over 500 Chinese refugees in his multiple properties just due to how horrific it was. When he reported it to the Nazis, attempted to seek aid, and he started to publicly condemn the Japanese, he was forced to step down from the Nazi party, causing him and his family to be subjected to extreme poverty, barely surviving on scraps. After the war, when the people of Nanking heard about his plight, they collectively raised funds and resources to help him get back on his feet. And when he died of old age, they raised a memorial there in his honor. Absolutely wild story. It's on the Wikipedia article somewhere in way more detail. After the Pearl Harbor attack, at least some men were alive in a pocket of air inside one of the capsized ships. Navy personnel could hear them banging on the hull and trying to signal for help, but there was no way to get at them safely. The water was full of fuel and oil, so blowtorches weren't a workable idea, and there was no way for divers to get into the ship because the damage had rendered the whole thing a death trap of twisted steel. There wasn't even any way to communicate with the trap men, so the guards at Pearl Harbor had to listen to those calls for help getting weaker and weaker, while inside everyone slowly suffocated. When they hauled the ship up for scrap later, there were 16 notches scratched onto the wall of that compartment, which means at least one casualty of Pearl Harbor lived until December 23rd, 1941. Goddamn. 16 days. At that point, in pure darkness and fear, how does one even count days? Question mark? One of the girls in the Donner Party was fed her dead mother and told afterwards they had an agreement to not feed people their family members, but they had broken off from the camp in an attempt to find rescue. She would randomly burst into tears about it at school years later. The whole story of the Donner Party is so horrible and sad, and it bothers me that it's just used for cannibal jokes. The thing about the Donners that really gets you is that if you read the accounts, you're confused in your 21st century thinking. To us, all these people in wagons were pioneers, explorers, outdoors people. We think that should be able to hunt and clean meat and build shelter and forage, etc. But what you realize whole reading is that these were not outdoors people. They were headed to California, but were basically people from the suburbs. They didn't have any outdoor skills. No one knew how to do anything. It was less like pioneers in challenging times than if your plane crashed in Antarctica and you had no supplies and had never seen snow. And the craziest part isn't even the girl who ate her mom. It was the one guy with any outdoor skills, William Eddy. He shot animals, did whatever he could for the camp, but was kind of poor so no one would help him while he was helping them. Then when he saw they could escape or die, he begged someone to watch his wife and 2-year-old and set off to find help. He eventually made it out and had search and rescue parties sent, but once those groups found the camp, the rich folks paid them to save them first and almost 100% of those people survived. So this dude had to go back to the camp himself and beg people to help him. He finally got like one guy to go back to the camp, but by the time they got there his wife and the other lady, who had been taking care of like 9 orphaned kids, had just died and the kids were defenseless. The guy literally shows up to find one of the last adult men eating the meat off the bone of his toddler's leg. Even then the guy basically can't ignore his humanity and tells the other guy to get out or be murdered. I wouldn't have made the same offer. TL. DNR. William Eddy was the hero of the Donner Party but was screwed over and had his whole family eaten. A letter from the Civil War by Sullivan Ballow. My very dear Sarah, the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I'm engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans on the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and sufferings of the revolution. And I'm perfectly willing to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence could break, and yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all these chains to the battlefield. The memories of the blissful moments I have spent with you come creeping over me, and I feel most gratified to God and to you that I have enjoyed them for so long, and hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might still have lived and loved together and seen our sons grown up to honorable manhood. Around us, I know, but few and small claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar, that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, and when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it will whisper your name. Forgive my many faults and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless and foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness. But, oh Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you, in the gladdest days and in the darkest nights, always. And if there be a soft breeze upon your cheek, it shall be my breath. As the cool air fans your throbbing temple, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me dead, think I am gone, and wait for thee, for we shall meet again. Sullivan Ballow was killed a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run, July 21st, 1861. Edit. I'm unable to reply to all of you, sadly, but I just want to say thank you so much for all the cake day wishes and awards. Teddy Roosevelt's mother Mitty and his wife Alice, who had just given birth days before, both died in the same house on the same day, hours apart from each other. In his diary entry that day, he drew a large black X and scribbled, "The light has gone out of my life." That's some heavy shit right there, man. He lost his son Quentin too in World War I. When his aircraft was shot down by German soldiers, they discovered that he was Roosevelt's son and buried him with full military honors and funeral, as they respected the president's son for wanting to fight. I learned about this in a Dan Cullen podcast. During the German-Soviet War, there was a Red Army soldier who sang each night with a hauntingly beautiful voice. His comrades would give him their tea rations and scarves to protect his larynx. One night, he couldn't sing because he had gotten sick. A German soldier crawled across no man's land and tossed something into the Soviet trench. The Soviet soldiers thought it was a grenade. However, it was a package containing a letter asking if the singer was okay and if he needed medicine. A truly heartwarming moment in an otherwise horrific front. Edit. Thanks for the awards and upvotes. Seriously, though, if you are even remotely interested in history, you can't go wrong with hardcore history. I never knew that I wanted to listen to a man talk about a topic for 16 hours. The Christmas truce of 1914 is also amazing. Soldiers created an unofficial truce for Christmas and celebrated the eve and the day together. I have also heard that the soldiers refused to fight each other for weeks after because they actually saw the humanity in each other. It was after threat of tyranny and execution that they began to fight. Edit. The soldiers on both fronts were switched with soldiers from different fronts to keep the fight going. Thanks for the award. The worst nightmare for the powers. That should not be. Virginia Woolf's suicide and the note she left behind makes me ducking weep like a baby. Just the way she expresses sentiments of happiness and love to her husband. But also her guilt and struggle with mental illness, it just kills me. Please look into her sister, Vanessa Bell. She was there through it all and was the inspiration for many of her books. Vanessa also painted the covers for many, as well as a hauntingly beautiful portrait of Woolf. Most if not all the astronauts aboard the Challenger survived the explosion. It was the crash into the water that would have killed them. I was going to mention this too, except in the context that it never should have happened. The night before the launch, NASA talked with Morton Fireco engineers. They made the solid rocket boosters. The engineers were very concerned about the weather conditions. The lowest temperature the shuttle had ever launched in was 54 degrees F. The conversation turned around to, "Can you prove there will be problems if we launch?" And engineers had to say no. There was no proof there definitely would be problems. So they proceeded with the launch. The melted O-ring made a temporary seal, which held for about 40 to 50 seconds. If there hadn't been a strong wind shear aloft that broke the seal loose, there's a chance they might have made it to space. The worst part is that the solid rocket boosters had a history of O-ring blow-by. This was not the first time O-rings did not seal correctly. It was the first time it completely failed. NASA knew of the problem, but they didn't prioritize trying to fix it. NASA put politics and money in front of human safety. It was the first time 13-year-old me saw it. I believed what I'd read, that NASA always put human safety first. It utterly shattered my view of them. When Columbia broke up on re-entry, I wasn't surprised. Edit. Wow. I woke up to a lot to respond to here. I want to respond to most of this, but I've got a busy day ahead. I'll try to get responses out throughout the day. Irish unmarried moms were sometimes required to live in institutions, raising their own babies until they were adopted. Imagine knowing how cute your kid was, taking care of it, knowing you couldn't keep it. Sometimes they were as old as 2 or 3 when adopted. The movie Philomena dealt with this topic. There is a sad but powerful Irish movie called The Magdalene Sisters about several girls in one of these places, and it is so heartbreaking. One of my favorite films though. Absolutely check it out if the subject interests you. When Alexander Hamilton's eldest son died, his second child Angelica Hamilton had a mental breakdown and she never recovered. Sometimes, her family would walk into a room with only her in it, and she would be speaking to her dead brother. I used to be a care worker for elderly people, and we had a lady in our facility who used to have a twin sister. The lady had a husband and they wanted children, but she was infertile, whereas her sister could have kids, but she never married. Her sister and husband were dead, with no kids. She was just alone, and she knew. But eventually dementia took this from her, and she would ask about her sister and husband all the time. One day I went in to give her her medication, and as I was in the kitchen I overheard her speaking to her husband and sister saying, "I know you're dead, but that's okay because you're here." She was lucid that evening. Told me she knew she was hallucinating, but she kept talking to them anyway. Broke my heart. I miss her. There's no more wolves in Ireland. They are coming back to Germany, and there are already groups which want to kill them all again, and they are spreading panic. There was a news story where a woman reported to be attacked by a wolf wearing a collar. It was a lost dog looking for help, which sniffed and licked her hand. I get viciously attacked every night by 3 tiny wolves. It's horrible. Every time I come home, they pounce on me and scratch me and sniff and lick until I collapse. I suffer this indignity every day, sometimes several times per day. WW1. Mercy dogs. They would go out into no man's land and find wounded soldiers. They would bring medical supplies for the soldiers to patch themselves up, or if the soldier was too mortally wounded, stay and comfort them in their final moments. Heck, WW1 on its entirety, these were kids taken out of high school sent to die on a trench. And why? So big fat guys could red row a map in order to improve their finances. I saw some gameplay of Battlefield 1, and I'm glad that the first moments of the game are literal kids dying in meaningless ways, taking cover in mud as bullets fly by. It's one of the most miserable times of modern history. I recommend watching All Quiet on the Western Front. If you're not a fan of documentaries, this is about the closest you can get to the mental meltdown of being in the trench. Don't be discouraged by its 1934 release date. It aged very well. There were approximately 300 infants and children that were murdered in Jonestown, being forcibly fed or injected with cyanide. I feel so much pain for all the victims, but the kids in particular make me ache with despair. There were some teens that weren't among the number because they were gone playing a basketball tournament. If I recall correctly, Jim Jonas' son was one of those teenagers who survived because of that. He was interviewed about it in a documentary I saw. Henry Gunther was an American soldier killed during WWI at 10:59 am on November 11th, 1918, 1 minute before the armistice took effect at 11 am. Gunther charged a German roadblock outfitted with machine guns. German soldiers tried waving him off, knowing the war would come to an end in mere moments. Apparently he got too close, fired a couple rounds, and was promptly shot and killed instantly. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.